So I've had this watercolor set for a very long time now, and you can tell by how clean these colors are that I have not been taking advantage of this really good watercolor set. But today, that all changes because we are going to sit down and we're going to learn watercolors together. So for this, I actually found my old acrylic paint palette. This thing's supposed to be really good for cleaning off paints, which is why I got it in the first place. I also had these cool brushes that have like water compartments in them. I think they're specifically for watercolors, but if you guys look at how disgusting they are, they haven't been used for years, and I only just found them the other day and they still had water in them from years ago, and I think there's mold growing inside them, guys. Look at this. It was disgusting, so I ended up buying some new watercolor brushes. I figured if we're trying out a new medium, let's get some new supplies to go along with it. So I bought brushes that had the water compartments in them. I'm not a watercolor expert, but I did used to really like using the other ones, even though I only used them a couple of times. So I got these ones. I feel like they don't feel as high quality as the old ones, to be honest. They feel a bit flimsy. I feel like the lids don't even go on properly, but I'm sure it will do. The brushes themselves seem pretty clean. And then I also got these brushes as well. I don't know if I'll use them for watercolor, but I thought it would be nice to have some options. These ones are a little more high-end. They feel really good. I also in the future would like to try painting with gouache, so even if I don't use them today, I could definitely use them in the future. Okay, before we begin, I feel like it's important to show you guys my previous watercolor work. I didn't do it too many times, and the few times I did do it was pretty much just learning the basics. However, because it's been so long since I did watercolors, and also because I only did them a couple of times when I did do them, I'm going all the way back to basics again today because I do not remember how I did these. The only thing I know is that inky pen bad. Because in these drawings you could see I was using an inky pen and the pen just went everywhere. It was not good. The other drawings were all in ballpoint pen, which worked a lot better. As you can see, there was no bleeding, so I learned that much, but other than that, we're pretty much starting fresh. So the last watercolor drawings I did were in 2022, so this is 3 years of no watercolors. Also, I did make a mistake because in this initial drawing, I drew it in inky line art pen because that's my go-to. I completely forgot that you shouldn't do that when it comes to watercolors. It was only when I was looking back at my previous watercolors that I was like, oh no. So then I did a second drawing in ballpoint pen, which is this one. So we've got 2 attempts today because I think attempt number 1 is going to go pretty terribly. But I also did this line art quite a few days ago, so I'm hoping at this point that the inky pen might be dried up enough that it doesn't bleed, but I really don't know. But I figured I drew it out. Let's just test it. Let's just use it as a test page. Okay, so I filled the watercolor brushes up with some water. We can finally make a start. The first thing I did in fact notice, however, is that there is no skin tone color. There's actually not a lot of colors in this set. It's quite a small set, so I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go back to my GCSE art lessons and figure out what colors I need to mix to get the certain shades and stuff I wanted. If you're new here, I've been a digital artist for quite a few years now, like 5 years. I haven't really done much traditional art at all. I'm kind of getting back into it now, and I've had the entire color wheel at my fingertips at like no extra cost to me, you know? Like I haven't had to work to create the color swatches I actually want. I just pick out what I want on the little color wheel and boom, it's done, you know? So this in itself was kind of intimidating to me because I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to remember how to like mix colors together. So I kind of just started with a white and I mixed orange with it for some reason, and I realized after I did that, I was like, why did I do that? Surely it would have been like a red and a white to make like a really light pinky tone. You could have like a orange undertone skin, but for this character in particular, she doesn't have that. She's supposed to be quite a pale character, which is why I was adding so much white here. I think so you guys know what you're looking at. This is actually the original drawing. These are the correct colors. This is how it should look. Warning you right now, this is not how it turned out in the end. It ended up being very different from the original colors. But that's fine because we're just experimenting. I wasn't expecting it to come out perfect or anything. One thing I realized pretty early on while practicing with these watercolors was that the colors that I was mixing and seeing on the paint palette wasn't the same color that was coming out on the paper. Often they'd come out more saturated than imagined, and sometimes they'd come out less saturated. I wondered if maybe I should stop trying to mix it so much, because I feel like another issue was I was adding too much water to these paints. I kind of wish that I had been a little more bold with the colors. I think I was a little too intimidated to make mistakes, and I ended up making everything kind of muted and not like trying things out a little more. For example, as you'll see very shortly when I do her hair is like a fiery orange color, and I think the orange color that's in the palette would have been perfect for it if I'd put it straight onto the paper, but instead I ended up kind of mixing it a little bit with some white and adding water to it and making it just really desaturated, which is not what I wanted. I did learn quite a lot from that, is to just kind of not be scared if you want it to look more vibrant, just to pick up the color and put it straight onto the paper. But I was quite intimidated, and because of that, none of the colors came out how I wanted, and I do think that if I had made her hair a more vibrant orange, maybe this piece would have come out a little better than what it actually did in the end. But I did learn for next time that when I want to do watercolors, don't make it too watery. I guess because it's in the name, I was just like, okay, I've got to make this super watery, but obviously if you do that, it kind of desaturates the color a little bit, which is not what I personally like for my art style. I definitely prefer things to be a little more on the vibrant side. I also did realize during this piece the ink was smudging a tiny little bit in some areas. I think it was the more inky areas where I'd made the line art a bit thicker. But overall, having the ink dry for a couple of days seems to have at least made it somewhat decent, but I still would stick with a ballpoint pen for watercolors because it doesn't seem to run at all. I just wouldn't chance it with the inky pen again. Yes, it was definitely something to know, is don't make the paint too watery. Don't be afraid to just slap on the paint straight onto the canvas. I was just feeling a little intimidated by the whole thing, and I didn't want to screw it up. But to be honest, this first piece of art anyway was supposed to be for experimenting, and I feel like as it went on and I made more mistakes and I kind of realized this art piece became sort of unsalvageable, I got a little more confident with just trying things and seeing how things worked, and it taught me enough that I feel like in my next piece of artwork that I'm gonna do, you can see there's a pretty big difference in it. Like, I feel it looks a lot better than this one. Oh, another thing to note as well that I noticed was I was being very impatient, which being a digital artist for so many years has definitely made me impatient, because I was trying to color areas that hadn't fully dried yet. So when I did that, the paint was mixing together and kind of creating this horrible muddy color, and it looked a mess. So for example, like the hair kind of touches the eyelashes, and instead of waiting for the hair to dry, I just went in and colored the eyelashes, and because of that, the watercolor just kind of mixed together and it became really messy and muddy, and it did not look good. So that's another thing I learned, was to be patient, enjoy the process, wait until things are dried. Basically, that was my big takeaway. I also think I did myself a bit of a disservice starting with a very big art piece. I mean, it looks basic, so I figured, oh, it'll be really easy because it's bigger, so, you know, if I make mistakes, you know, it's less detail, so I felt like it was a safer option. But in reality, because it's such a big art piece and there's not a lot of detail in there, but I mean it's big as in like the face and stuff is like pretty big on the page, like it's pretty big. It's fine. I don't know how else to describe it. Big. And I think in a weird way, it actually was harder than doing smaller details. I felt the big areas made it a little hard to get a completely even look with the watercolor. There'd be some areas that felt really saturated and some areas that felt kind of patchy, and because obviously I wasn't used to controlling the paint and getting an even coating, it kind of didn't help. It kind of didn't turn out how I would have wanted with how patchy it is. As you can see here, I tried to add a little bit of color to the skin. I didn't like the color of the skin. It was really yellowy orange, and it's just not what I wanted. So I thought maybe if, in my head, I was like, maybe if I add a little bit of red, it'll look like it has a little more color. Unfortunately for me, it ended up making her look like she's sick, so it did not turn out the way I wanted. I also don't know why I decided to make the hoodie brown. It's yellow in the original piece, but I think in my head, because the skin was so yellowy orange, that if I made it yellow, it would just wash out the skin more. I don't know. I was trying to make the right choices, but it felt like I was making all the wrong choices. But the main part of this piece wasn't to be good. It was literally just to practice. I've already got the finished piece as a digital piece of art, so it was just practice, it was just experimenting, but it did go, I'm not gonna lie, it went horrifically wrong. But I learned a lot from it, so that's the important thing. But yeah, the only other thing that I could think to say about this piece is that I guess I was just not used to the colors, because even when I do traditional art, I usually do alcohol markers, and when you put a marker down on a page, that's the color that it is. Even when it dries, it's not really much different. However, with these watercolors, every time I'd put down a color, it would dry like a much brighter, less saturated version of that same color. So I think that's where I went wrong as well. I wasn't prepared for that kind of, I guess, step. I've never really had to deal with that before, or not for a very long time, so that didn't really help me either, to be honest. And after all was said and done, I just went in with a white gel pen and I just tried to add some highlights. I think I made it a little better, especially like the eyes and stuff, but overall I'm still not very happy with this drawing. I even wrote a little note, watercolor attempt, in the corner, just to remind myself in future that this was an attempt at watercolors. But yeah, no, it was a big fail, not happy with it. Luckily, I do have my second drawing, and I'm gonna take what I've learned from this piece and I'm going to apply it to the next piece. Okay, so this next piece is quite a bit smaller, and I'd say it has a little bit more detail in it. If you look at the scars and the braid in her hair, I figured this might be a little bit more of an interesting piece to do, to practice using watercolors with the small areas. Again, this was a digital piece of artwork that I did. It was just a sketch, so I didn't really color it or anything. She is my D&D character. I drew her in the last video as well, but I decided to use her again for this video because, like I said, it was just a sketch anyway, so I figured it'd be perfect for this. The good thing about this is that she has purple skin, so I was like, okay, great, I can't really mess up on the skin a second time at least. I did feel a little more confident going into this one, and I don't know if maybe it's because I just did that previous piece and it kind of felt like a little bit of a warm-up. I kind of got to grounds with watercolors again. I was planning to watch some tutorials on watercolors. I didn't end up doing that because I think I got a little cocky, and I'll throw my hands up and I'll admit that. I think when I saw my previous watercolors, I was like, whoa, these are actually a lot better than I remembered them being. You know, maybe I can just pick that up straight away and I don't need to watch any tutorials. Like, it'll probably just come back to me. It didn't. So I definitely should have just swallowed my pride and watched those tutorials, but I guess I was just kind of wanting to experiment on my own terms. But it maybe would have helped me a little bit to watch a tutorial or two, but that's what I get for being cocky about it. But other than all of that, I think the only thing I do differently next time is maybe using less water. I think one of the hard things that I found when doing this was finding the right balance of color and water. I feel like the colors I was using had way too much water in, which is probably why the colors were coming out so desaturated. So that's something I learned for next time. I do wish I'd been a little bolder with the second piece as well, because I think I was a little scared after having it go so wrong last time. I was playing it a little safe, which I shouldn't do, because you don't learn from playing it safe. This character's hair color, her hair is much darker, and when I did put the paint on the page, at first it looked a lot darker and then it dried a lot brighter, but I do wish I'd just gone in with the black and just made it black. Like, it's supposed to be a really dark purple, but I could have done like black with purple highlights and that would have given the illusion of it being like a dark purple. That would have been fine enough, but I really just, I guess like I said, I just got a little too scared. I was doing the same thing again where I wasn't waiting for things to dry before I was going in with like a second coat, or I was doing details on things that were like right next to the wet paint, and it was kind of smudging, so I hadn't learned at that point not to do that. It was the second drawing when I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I should be being more patient, but I did learn that for next time at least. With this second piece, I did end up going in a second time with darker colors and adding an extra layer of shadow, which did give it a little bit more dimension, which is why I'm much happier with it. With the first piece, I kind of just did the shadows once and didn't do much with like the hair and stuff. As you can see, I'll be going in with a darker color soon with the hair, and it just really transforms the entire image. But the second piece was a lot better, so I was much happier. I feel like I had learned a lot from the last piece. One last thing though that I do feel like I didn't take advantage of was the paper towel that I had, because I ended up messing up the eye at one point with like a red color, and I used the paper towel to soak up the paint, which took the paint away, and it really helped. So I kind of didn't realize that before. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but yeah, using a paper towel to like get rid of the paint before it dries, and you pretty much stick an eraser, like, it's great. So I think next time I definitely take advantage of that a little more. But overall, the second piece I feel like came out a lot better, and you can see a pretty decent amount of improvement from the first piece to the second piece. I think the first piece, most of its issues lie in the colors itself. I should have really planned it out a little more. I should have, thought about what I was doing a little bit more than I actually did. But I learned a lot from it, so I also feel like I can't complain too much, because I feel like the mistakes are what helped me make the second piece look a lot better. And then the last thing I did again was go in with a white gel pen and add some highlights to the piece, and it was done. It looked so much better than the first piece. I think even just the coloring itself looked a lot better, looked a lot neater. I think the first piece, again, I rushed it, I didn't think about it too much, and I think the big areas made it really hard for me to get an even coat over the whole piece. The second piece though, I'm really happy with it, and I think I made a lot of progress overall. Okay, so here are the two finished pieces. The first piece, which did not go very well, as you can see, pretty blotchy, especially on the hoodie there. She looks a bit sickly. I'm not too proud of this one, but the second piece, I really liked it, and I do think you can see quite a bit of improvement. So overall, I'm really happy with how this went. I think I learned a lot and I improved a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, then please make sure to like and subscribe for more artsy content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!